The first thing you need to know is the three main functions of trig. It's called sine, also known as sin, cosine, also known as cos, and tangent, also known as tan. Okay, so these are your three main trig functions. When you get later on, well, there's actually more trig functions than the main three, but these are the three that we need to know. Um, so sine is always going to be opposite over hypotenuse. Okay, cosine is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is always opposite over adjacent. So those are your three main trig functions. Now, there's something that we're only going to be dealing with right triangles, okay? So there's something called a theta. The theta is a little thing like this. You guys, it is a Greek symbol, and it's usually used for to mean anything about what's the word I'm looking for? Degrees. When we're dealing with degrees and stuff like that, that's what the theta is. Now with right triangles, wherever the theta is, it tells us where our adjacent and opposite sides are. For example, if I had a theta up here, or it's like right here, the opposite side is always the side that's not touching the theta symbol. So this, let's say we had a little theta right here, okay? The opposite side is the one that's not touching. Now, the adjacent side is the one next to the theta that's not the hypotenuse. And the hypotenuse is always your longest side. This one over here, same idea. Opposite is opposite the theta. Adjacent is always next to the theta. Hypotenuse is always the longest side. So, when I ask you to find the three trig functions, well, you're going to always look for sine, cosine, and tangent. Okay? So sine, here's the theta. The opposite side would be this one. The adjacent side would be this one. And finally, the hypotenuse, the longest side, or the 11, would be this one. So first, let's look at what is sine. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. You can look back to the front page, but it's opposite of hypotenuse, or you just write 5 over 11. Cosine. Cosine is just adjacent of hypotenuse, or 6 over 11. Finally, you have tangent. Tangent is just opposite over adjacent. So it's 5 over 6. Okay? Same idea with the next one. Alright? The theta is in a different spot now. So that means the opposite side, well, it's this one. The adjacent side, it's the one next to. And the hypotenuse is always the longest side, or this 5 right here. Okay? So when looking at our 3, we're going to find sine. Okay? Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, or 3 over 5. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, or 4 over 5. Or finally, tangent, which is opposite over adjacent, or 3 over 4. Okay, I want you guys to try the next one. First, label your opposite side, your adjacent side, and your hypotenuse. This will help you out in the long run. And then you're going to find sine, cosine, and tangent. Okay? I want you guys to try that one out. Okay, so you should have figured out this is the opposite side. Opposite the hypotenuse. Okay? This was the adjacent. Next to, or opposite the theta was the opposite. Next to is adjacent. Finally, the longest side is always the hypotenuse. Okay? So your sine should have been 12 over 13. Your cosine 5 over 13. And then finally your tangent should have been 12 over 5. Now, on your guys' calculators, you will find you'll see sine, cosine, and tangent. Okay? Sine, cosine, and tangent. So, what you're going to do is for each one, you are going to press sine, cosine, or tangent, and then you're going to enter the number in. So the first one you're going to find sine. You're going to hit sine. Okay. Sine's going to give you a parenthesis sign. You're going to put in 95. Now before you do this, let me know, because your guys' stuff should be in degrees and it doesn't always automatically set to degrees for your calculator, so let me know. So this should give you 0.996. Let's do the same with cosine. Cosine of 95. So you just press cosine and then you press 95. Should get negative 0.087. Finally, tangent of 95. What you should get for that is negative 11.43. Okay? It's pretty easy. All you gotta do is enter these into your calculators. Okay, so the next one, 0. Sine of 0 should give you 0. Cosine of 0 should give you 1. And then finally tangent of 0 should give you 0. Now I want you guys to try 90. I'm just going to let you know right now there's going to be one that says error. That's okay. Just put undefined. Okay? So, this is what I mean. Sine of 90 should give you 1. Cosine of 90 should give you 0. And finally, tangent of 90 should give you undefined. It'll say error. Remember that tangent is always essentially what it is it's sine over cosine. You're saying you're taking this top number divided by this bottom number. 1 divided by 0 is undefined, and that 0 divided by 1 up here is still 0. So that's why that works like that. Okay. Find the measurement of each angle. This is a little bit trickier because we had to find a couple things. So, first we had to, what do we know? We know this side and we know this side. Okay, so we know these two sides. So you know that this is your opposite side, opposite of the theta. You know this is your adjacent side, not your adjacent, your hypotenuse, because it's the longest side, or it's the side that's opposite the right triangle. Okay? We know opposite, we know hypotenuse. So, there's only one thing that uses opposite and hypotenuse. And what that one is sine. Okay? So, sine. Now, in order to get what we need, we're trying to figure out, we know that opposite is 15, we know that hypotenuse is 22. To figure this out, we're going to use sine, but we're not going to use the normal sign. It's called sine -1. Okay, so sine -1. What you'll hit on your calculator is you'll press second sine, and what will happen is you'll get sine -1. Okay, sine -1. Now, when you do that, what it does is it actually helps us out by saying, okay, so this is what the length of the angle is going to be. So, I'm going to set all these up. And then, because I do not have a calculator with me, that actually will do this. So, I'm going to set these up. And then I'm just going to tell you tomorrow what they actually are. So I will set it up and then I'll show you. But if you put in your calculator sine of -1, you should get 15 over 22. When you put that in, 15 divided by 22, and you close your parentheses, it should give you a degree. Okay? So that's going to be our first one. The second one. Okay? So here's the theta. We know this side, this is opposite. We know this side, this is adjacent. There's only one of the three things that deals with opposite and adjacent, and that is tangent. So you're going to press, once again, you're going to press second. Now you're going to put tangent. Okay? When you do that, you should get, so it's going to be tan -1 of 10 over 14. Because once again, we figured out that opposite side, we knew that this was the adjacent side, and only tangent deals with opposite and adjacent. Okay, this side, the theta is up here, so this is opposite. Okay, we have nothing there. Well, we know adjacent, and we know hypotenuse. Okay? So adjacent and hypotenuse, well, that is cosine. So we're going to do the second cosine to get cosine -1 of 16 over 22. Okay? This next one, opposite hypotenuse. Okay, so that's sine, so it's going to be sine -1 of 9 over 15. Next one, opposite adjacent. So this is once again tan, so you're going to use tan -1 of 17 over 14. So all this does is it gives us the degree of the angle here. Okay, that's what it's doing. Last but not least, okay, so this has to be the adjacent. This has to be the hypotenuse. So it's going to be cosine. of 9 over 25. Okay, now I want you guys to try these real fast. Okay, so this first one, you should know that this is opposite and this is adjacent. So that should have been tan -1 of 8 over 9. This one was opposite and hypotenuse, or sine -1 of 11 over 22. Okay? Once again, I know I don't have the calculations right now, but I'll have them for you guys tomorrow when you guys do this. Okay, now, find the missing side. Find cosine if tangent is 8 over 15. Alright, so this is going to use a little bit of what we learned last chapter about the Pythagorean theorem and this chapter, okay? So, find cosine if tangent is 8 over 15. Okay, so we know tangent. Okay, tangent is opposite over adjacent. Okay, that's what we know tangent is opposite over adjacent. We also are told the numbers of the opposite over the adjacent, meaning that the opposite is 8, because that's the top part, and the bottom part is 15, so this is 15. So here's the theta. You know the opposite is 8. You know the adjacent is 15. So what we're going to try to find is this last side up here. Well, this is where a squared plus b squared equals c squared comes in, because we're going to use that to find the third side. So our a is 15, so we're going to take 15 squared. Our b is 8, so we're going to take 8 squared equals c squared, okay? Or 225 plus 64 equals c squared. Add them together, you get 289 equals c squared. So you square root both sides, you get c equals 17. Okay, so we know this last side up here is 17. This is what the hypotenuse is. Knowing that, what we can do is now go back to originally what it's asking for. Find cosine if tangent is this. So cosine. What we need is adjacent over hypotenuse. Okay? So adjacent over hypotenuse. Well, we just figured out the hypotenuse. We already knew adjacent was 15. So you know that the cosine is now just 15 over 17. And that is how you find the answer. Okay, let's try another one. Find cosine if sine is 7 over 25. Well, we know sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Okay, so we know the opposite side has to be this one, so this one is 7 over the hypotenuse. The longest side, which is this one, is 25. So we're going to try to find that third side there. Okay, so 7. So once again, a squared, a, b, c, a squared, which is 7 squared, plus b squared, we don't know what b squared is, equals c squared, which is 225. Or 7 squared is 49, plus b squared equals 225. We have to subtract 49 from both sides. When we do that, So you get 225. Or should be 225. Sorry, this should be 625. I do apologize. That's 625 because 25 times 25 is 625. 625 minus 49 gives us 576. So we got b squared equals 576. Now if I square root that number, we get b equals 24. Okay, so we know our third side is 24, meaning that's the adjacent. This is the hypotenuse. We need one cosine, so that's adjacent over hypotenuse, or just 24 over 25 equals adjacent over hypotenuse, which is our cosine. Okay? So I want you guys to try the third one on here. Okay? See if you can figure out tangent if you know sine is 4 over 5. Okay. Since sine is opposite over hypotenuse, okay? So we know that the opposite side, this one is 4. We know the hypotenuse is 5. So we're trying to find this side right here. So we're trying to find our a. So we know that a squared plus 4 squared equals 5 squared. Or a squared plus 16 equals 25. Subtract 16, you get a squared equals 9. And now you just have to square root both sides. You get a equals 3. So that means we know that this side right here is 3. And now we can find our tangent. Remember, tangent equals opposite over adjacent, which equals now opposite is 4, adjacent is 3, so 4 over 3. Okay, try the worksheets out. If you have any questions, just let me know.